My name is Arun Jagtiani, and I'm a proud St. Martin. In a few short weeks, our country is going to be heading to the polls to elect 15 new members to Parliament, and I think the entire voting population can benefit from knowing a little bit more about who these candidates are. Over the next few days, I'm going to interview a few new faces and a few political veterans. So join me, St. Martin, and let's talk politics. Welcome to another episode of Talking Politics with Arun Jagtiani. I'm joined today by the leader of the St. Martin Christian Party, none other than Mr. Wycliffe Smith. Mr. Smith, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you. Thank you for taking time off the busy campaign trail to step into our studios today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and I hope that we'll be able to have a good conversation.
Oh, I look forward to it. I look forward to it. Yeah, it's with what's going on. It's been a very eventful 2 years for yourself. Yes. So, the first you contested your first parliamentary election would have been in 2016, right? 2016. You were elected. You served as
we were not elected the first time around.
Oh, so, sorry. Yes.
First time
in 2016, you just missed
by
this much.
votes.
Yes, but you were very vocal from the sidelines, is what I recall. In just speaking about what was happening in government and with the media.
One of the objectives that I had was to inform the people as to what is going on, especially in Parliament. You know, Parliament is a new institution in our country.
This is true.
And so people were not used to it. And so I tried to write and give information as much as possible about how Parliament works and what's happening there.
Sure.
And especially what I did was, especially during the election, was to indicate that it's a parliamentary election and not an election for the Council of Ministers, because a lot of the campaigning was what I'm going to do when I get in government.
Yes.
But we don't know if you will get in government because government ministers are appointed.
Correct.
And usually they are appointed, they're selected by Parliament and then appointed by the governor.
So it's interesting you bring this up. It seems to be there's a big misconception within the community at large, let's say, in terms of, once you're elected, what you actually have the power to do and to execute. And sometimes there's a frustration from the community to say, we want things done now. Like we were talking off camera, people just want results. They're not too caught up in the process behind the scenes or the challenges behind the scenes. They want to see results. And I suppose that's been...
Well, that's been a challenge for me. After I became elected and got into Parliament, then realized that you need to work with one another to get things done. And a lot of times you hear on the campaign trail, when I get into Parliament or when I get into government, I am going to do this. You really can't do it on your own. You need to work and cooperate with Parliament or with the Council of Ministers. And in our case, where we just had one seat, we needed to work with others in order to get even a meeting called.
Yes. So just to recap that timeline a little bit. So 2016 you contested, just missed. Earning a seat. Then, of course, we had Hurricane Irma in 2017. And unfortunately, we had a snap election shortly thereafter. And in 2018, you ran in 2018 again. And this time you were successful in securing a seat.
We got one seat.
Yes.
And we were about 40 votes shy of getting what is called the residue seat.
Yes. Okay.
So we might have gotten 2 seats at that time.
Right. So then you served briefly in Parliament.
I served briefly in Parliament as a member of Parliament. And then I went over to the executive branch and became the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport.
Yes.
And after government fell, we was appointed Prime Minister for the caretaker government.
Yes. And now back to Parliament.
And now
back to Parliament. So again, we were saying off camera, it's like, the St. Martin political timeline is like dog years. Right, like because that resume of Parliament, Minister of Health, Youth, Culture and Sports, Prime Minister, and a second term as a Parliament, that should have been like a 12-year stint right there. Yeah, but in St. Martin politics, again, dog years. It's really 2 years in human lives. But anyway, that's that is what it is.
Absolutely.
Certainly a wonderful experience, I would imagine, or an eventful learning experience, I should say.
It was, especially in Parliament. For me, it was the first time being in Parliament after having written about it. Being in the executive branch, I've functioned not exactly as a minister, but I functioned very close to, at that time, the commissioners of education. I worked very closely with the commissioner. I worked in the central government, also as director of education. So I'm familiar with the process at the executive level. So that worked out. I felt very comfortable there, and as we got started, I could see we got quite a few things done.
Did you have a preference of serving in Parliament or as a minister? Is there one of those that you prefer over the other, or?
Well, I would say not one over the other. There are two different ways of serving.
Sure.
In the executive branch, you're hands-on. You're doing it.
Yes.
You're taking the decisions. You're working with the staff, and you can actually get more done
from
the executive branch. But from the Parliament side, actually, it takes a long time, and people, talking about laws. I was just sharing with you that a law that passed when I was Minister of Education, it had taken about 10 to 15 years to get through the process. And so it takes a while. So especially in how we've been going in St. Martin with, these short terms, we're not going to get many laws passed.
Right.
What we do see happening in Parliament is that certain laws are amended. So an article is amended here, an article is amended there, but a full-fledged law initiated from the very beginning, from scratch, much longer process.
And how do we get past this? Because, they sometimes say one of the advantages of being small is it's easier to get things done. But from the experience you're sharing with me, it doesn't sound to be the case at all. It sounds like we're tripping over ourselves, really.
Unfortunately, what we have done, Arun, is to take over a system that comes from Europe and from the Netherlands. Yes. And we've taken over that system and kind of try to make it work here. And it doesn't really work. We're going to have to, as a new country, we're going to need to review our systems and see how we can adapt them to suit our situation.
So is that beyond electoral reform also constitutional reform? Is that what that implies, or?
That will imply that also, and that is also a very tedious process, because changing the constitution is
that sounds like a
because you need the support of all the countries in the kingdom. St. Martin just can't go and change the constitution. Because within the system, in the judicial system, there's something what they call uniformity. So they try to keep the laws as uniform as possible, because the judges come from the Netherlands, and they serve in all the countries and in the public entities of Seba, Statia, and Bonaire. So they want to make sure that the laws are very similar.
Right, so that there can be an exchange of yes, within the kingdom. So realistically, constitutional reform that's a dream. That's not realistic. But electoral reform, how realistic is that? And how much of a priority does it need to be right now?
I think it should be a priority. And what I was able to do just before I left government was to submit a proposal for electoral reform.
Okay.
And that was to ensure that the elections are aligned with the Constitution. Because that has been our problem. I said in an introduction that if we're looking to change all the electoral laws at the same time, that's going to take a long process. But we can change one article at a time.
Okay.
And this is my proposal is to amend 2 articles in 2 laws. In the election law that regulates the voting process, and then in the law that regulates the finances and the registration of political parties. So just 2 articles where you cut down the time during what we call a snap election. Snap elections don't really exist in our Constitution, but the Constitution says if Parliament is dissolved, then within 3 months one must have a new Parliament.
Yes.
And then, but what the electoral law, the election law, voting law does, and the other law that regulates the financing, it does not take that into consideration. It says, well, you know, the process, for example, in order to register a new party, you need to take, you know, the party needs 6 weeks. Sure. And so when you start counting those days, it exceeds the 3 months that the Constitution talks about. To be able to vote, you know, a voter needs to be given X amount of time. Let's say 30 days, and then, you know, the nomination has to take place at a certain time. And so when you follow the regular pattern of elections, though the days exceed the Constitution. And so what is needed, and this is was my proposal, just to cut down the number of days, so within 3 months that it all can happen if that particular article is invoked. If Article 59 is invoked, then those particular articles would be operational.
But it would still leave the door open for snap elections.
Yes,
Okay.
It would.
And can I ask, were you in favor of these current elections that we're having now?
Yes, in the sense I did vote along.
Okay.
And that is because of the major changes and shiftings that were taking place
within Parliament
and
the ministries,
and subsequently also within government.
Okay.
That I felt that we're getting such a shifting that's going on that we need to go back to the people and let the people take that decision.
So I heard that that explanation, I think, from the former Prime Minister, Ms. Marlin. And she was saying the reason why we need to have these snap elections is exactly that, for the people to speak, or for the people's voice to be heard.
Yes.
But technically, the people had spoken in 2018 with the elections, because the members of Parliament, we voted in the 15 members of Parliament. The alignment of these members had shifted, had changed, but it was still the 15 people that were elected. What do you say to that argument that says, you know, the 15 were voted in, their support for the ministers had changed, and again, the way they aligned themselves, the coalition had certainly shifted or moved in a different direction, but the core 15 or the 15 sitting members were democratically elected.
Yes, they were, but for example, if you look now in Parliament.
Yes.
In Parliament, we started off with 4 factions.
Okay.
4 factions.
Yes.
We have 8 now.
Okay. I didn't realize that. Okay, 8.
We have 8. We have 4 independents.
Okay.
And then the other parties. 4. And that is very, very difficult to govern. When
Sure.
you have to deal with
the independents and or with people declaring themselves independent.
Yes, that's not what the people voted for. True,
they voted those individuals were voted in, and a lot of times people ride in on the tails of the party, so to speak. Yes. So it's not the 15 highest vote getters that get the seats necessarily.
No, not necessarily.
Well, case in point would be 2016. You just missed the seat, but I think you got more votes than at least 4 or 5 members that were sitting in Parliament from that election.
Yes, it has to do with the party.
Yes.
Once
Yes.
the party meets the number of votes
Sure.
that are required to have a seat, then
Sure.
the party. But unfortunately, because the way our laws are set up, once the party gets to that point,
Correct.
then the party really doesn't exist anymore in terms of the law. Then it's the individuals.
I think for me, yeah, that's one of the frustrating things, I think, is you have individuals that get the seat via the party, but then they take complete ownership of the seat. And it creates a situation now where people declare themselves independent, and the whole thing kind of crumbles within itself. It implodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we prevent this from happening? Because this seems to be the same. It's like we're tripping over the same thing over and over again. It's 9 years now as country status, and we've seen it happen government after government.
You know, the informateurs, that was Dr. Nilnaf Arduin and Mr. Jan Bojon. After an election, the governor appoints a formateur, he appointed 2.
Yes.
And if you look and read their report carefully, they actually predicted that this would happen. Because they said, and their report was called More Than the Numbers. And then the point that they stressed was what they call the human factor is the one that's going to cause the disruption within the parties. And so they said there are 2 things, after talking to lots of people, that would be required for good and stable governance. Yes. That is a good governing program.
Yes.
And the second one is the human factor.
How do you control the human factor?
That's what they said. And they then explained the human factor for them was the different personalities. The personalities, there were 2 other aspects that they included. But one was personalities. And they felt, coming out of the election, when they said, looking at the various personalities, they kind of said, it's not going to, it's going to be rather unstable.
So, yeah, again, I still feel confused as to the solution.
The solution would be the human factor. If we can change and put self aside, and if we can begin to put the business of the people aside. I said in Parliament when I got back in, one of the first things I said, you know, if we can get statesmen back in Parliament who would be concerned about the people's business, and I said out of the 112 politicians that are vying, contesting, now if we can get 15 statesmen out of them, then we're going to be good to go in St. Martin. Right. But because personally I feel that once in Parliament, we should try to put the politics aside.
Absolutely. Yeah, it should be about the country.
It should be about the country.
But that human factor has proven that almost to be, proven definitely in 9 years not to be the case.
Unfortunately, if we don't change and get the personalities correct, then
are we doomed to fail if we don't get 15 statesmen? Because or stateswomen, statespeople, are we doomed to fail if we can't get that out of? I don't even know how many people run this. 120, 130.
112.
112 in this election.
In this election.
It's
for 15 seats.
For 15 seats.
What we need to do is, I would say, because as the St. Martin Christian Party, we tried, because we ran on stability in government.
Yes.
Stability.
Yes.
And so we tried, we worked at it. Let's say even within the Council of Ministers, when I was while I was there,
Yes.
we did some work on even team building.
Okay.
To make sure that we can function as a team, and that was very difficult also.
Yes, yes. We didn't create the desired results in the end, right? Because here we are again.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on, or how easy would it be to modify the system, whereas if somebody gets elected into parliament and they want to declare themselves independent or they want to jump ship to another party, fine, but the seat stays with the party unless you outright earned your seat or had reached a certain threshold. Is that a realistic scenario, and how are you in favor of such a modification?
I would certainly be in favor of it,
Okay.
but knowing how our system works and knowing that we're tied into the rest of the kingdom, in the Netherlands they've tried that before, but it has to do with one's the democratic principle of, once you're sworn in as an individual person and you swear to uphold the law individually, not as a party. And that is part of our right in our system.
So then what if, and again, I'm shooting ideas out of frustration, let's say. So what about then just the top 15 vote getters get a seat? So the seats don't go to the party, because it's like you're getting in on the party, but then it's your seat after. So why not just have them earn their seats from the very beginning and just the top 15 vote getters across the board? Is that?
The
it would have gave you a seat in 2016.
Well, the law would certainly have to change.
Of course.
Previously we had in St. Martin that the first top persons on the list would get in government.
Regardless of their votes.
Yes, regardless of the votes.
On their...
and that seemed unfair.
Of course,
and so it was changed. It's only changed in St. Martin. The other countries...
the other countries don't have that.
Don't have that.
So it is possible we can have a different structure.
So it's here based on, merit.
Right.
You deserve, you earn.
You pulled your seats, yeah.
The votes, and so you're rewarded for that.
Sure. So it is possible, though, that we can have a system that's slightly different. Slightly different. So one of those two ideas are not that far-fetched.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just speaking out of frustration again, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again, expecting a different result. And if we keep having these snap elections, the human factor is not going to go away. The human factor is always going to be there. And the odds of all of a sudden now, 15 statesmen or statespeople, as we say, getting elected, it hasn't happened in the last 9 or 10 years, if you will. So that human factor keeps playing a role, and I think at some point we have to look at it, or we're going to go insane. And I think...
But I think that if we looked at it as political parties, because I happen to be reviewing this report again, because we're going into another election, and I thought that's interesting. And if we can get people, because I discussed this with our candidates.
Sure.
And what we did with our candidates the last time was they each signed a document.
Sure.
Before the election, saying, if I get in Parliament, and I will not retain my seat if I decide to leave, but I will give it up to the party.
Sure.
And so we had our candidates sign that.
Have they signed it for this election as well?
Well, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay.
But that is something. So you need to work with the people, with the candidates.
Sure.
Years ago, we talked about a parliamentarian in that time doing the honorable thing. When it came to a point, you say, "All right, I resign and I leave the seat with the party." That was the honorable thing. Now, the honorable thing does not exist anymore.
Right.
And there's where the human factor also plays that role. It has to do with integrity.
But yeah, of course.
And it has to do with your personality also. So if people of integrity go into politics, I think we can restore the human factor.
Okay, you have a very optimistic outlook on that. I believe we need to have laws that will guide or protect us from the human factor.
The thing
to some
about it
extent.
is we try to get laws, but laws do not regulate everything and every facet
Fair
of
enough.
life.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we see that if something goes wrong, another law.
Right.
And I noticed, for instance, the Council of Advice, they advise on laws that are being proposed to go to Parliament. And one of the things that they do is to ask the lawmaker, the initiative, because, for instance, MP Westcott Williams, she
Yes.
recently came up with an initiative law, and that is to ban the single-use
Yes,
plastics. And one of the things, the question that was posed to her as the initiative of the law is there any other way that you can regulate this other than by a law? Start thinking about those things, because very quickly we think of a law, but then then Parliament passes a law, but enforcing it becomes a problem because Parliament does not enforce and execute.
No.
Parliament says, okay, this law, but then it goes over to the government, and Parliament needs to realize, does the government has the resources, the capacity, etc., etc.
It's one thing to have the laws, another thing to implement it.
Yes, and we have lots of laws.
Yes.
Lots of laws, but
that are turn a blind eye to.
But we don't get to implement them.
Sure. Okay. Well, I think on the parliamentary level, there would be, if it was laws regulating that, it would be hard not to observe them. Yeah. But moving on from that, talk to me about the St. Martin Christian Party. The list this time around, you have how many candidates on the list?
We have 13.
13. Lucky number 13.
Yes.
Okay.
We had 12 last time.
Okay. So and the first time around it was
We
I
had
think 6 or 8.
We had 9.
9 the first time. Okay.
9.
So the party has grown not only in voter support but also in candidates.
Yes.
And what is the let's say the goal for this election? Do you believe a full mandate is realistic, or are you again looking at just securing 1 or 2 seats and try to be a difference maker in the coalition or in the forming of a coalition?
Well, or in the opposition.
Or in the opposition.
Or in the opposition.
Okay. That's well said. Okay.
But we're looking to get at least 3 seats, because we realize with a 1 seat. It was a great experience,
yes.
But it was rather difficult to move forward, because you need the support of at least 2 other parliamentarians just to call a meeting. And
right, so if you're there by yourself, there's
you have to do a lot of lobbying to get it done. Whereas if you do have the support in terms of numbers, it's easily you can sit together and say, this was in our manifesto, this is what we wanted to execute, let's go for it, because the 3 of us or the 4 of us or more, this is what we're about. Now you will need to pick and choose and say, okay, now I'll need the support of this one, that one, and the other.
Is there a particular party you're more inclined to want to form a coalition with?
Not at this time. That is not something that we would want to even discuss at
Fair.
this time.
Okay. So all options are on the table.
All options.
All options are on the table. If the people give you the support, so the St. Martin Christian Party is fortunate to be part of a ruling coalition or mandate, but they're in the driver's seat, or have a voice in the driver's seat at least. What are the top 3 things on your list that you want to get accomplished immediately?
Well,
we know nothing happens immediately in government, but again, in a perfect world, if you can get in there and execute, your top 3 wishes.
Well, coming from education, one of the things that I would like to see happen, and that is, let me look at government. Government itself, something what is called a public expenditure review. How is government spending its money?
Interesting. Okay.
within the Ministry of Education, I feel that a lot of money is spent, but where exactly
Where's
is
it
it
going?
going?
Yes.
Are we getting the worth out of the dollars that we're spending,
Sure.
or the guilders? I think that is very important.
Okay.
That we know how we're spending our money.
Sure.
And
Can it be more effectively done? Well, maybe I'm almost certain it can be, but how do we do it more effectively? Let's say.
yes.
Okay.
And I think also within the Ministry of Justice, that needs a lot of attention. It needs reform. It needs a complete overhaul, especially in terms of the personnel, the HR situation, the prison situation.
Okay. So whole justice reform and okay.
Yeah. Finances, how we're spending our money.
Sure.
And how we can generate revenue. And it's not always by, taxing people.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Those are some of the things. I think I would like for us to focus on our youth.
Yes.
We're saying these are, this is the future of this country.
Right.
And we really need to focus on developing them, offering them programs that will enable them to be part and parcel of this community.
And prepared for the...
Be prepared. One of the things that I did when I was Minister of Education was to look at the vocational school.
Yes.
So that, and begin to start with a reform there.
Sure.
So that our young people, the preparation that they get would be much more related to the job.
To the job opportunities that exist. Of course. So, okay, you served as Minister of Education.
Culture, Youth and Sports.
Culture, Youth and Sports, yes. Let's give the whole title. And in all fairness, you only were in that seat for about a year, plus or minus.
Yes,
so
a year and four.
So I can't expect you to have solved every issue in that, but certainly at least you should have a good understanding of, the education system on the island. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate our public education system? 10 being it's perfect. We're thoroughly preparing our youth for the future they have, for the opportunities that St. Martin can offer. And 1 being it's absolutely deplorable, and we're again not preparing our youth at all. Where do we fall right now?
When you ask about public education, you need to define that a little bit.
Okay.
Because we do have public education, that those are schools that are fully subsidized by the government.
Yes.
And in fact, they're run by government. Government is the school board.
Okay.
Then you have what we call subsidized schools. These are schools that get a subsidy, but they they have their own
curriculum.
No, not a curriculum.
No, okay. Their own board.
Their own board.
Okay.
And then you have what is called private schools.
Yes.
And these, that's paid education. Parents send their children there. So when you you're asking about,
let's go with the ones that the government. Yes, the government-run schools.
Yes, government-run schools.
The ones that subsidize and government is also the board.
Yes.
So that would be Milton Peters and...
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Milton Peters...
I'm getting schooled right now. Okay.
That's a subsidized school board.
That's a subsidized school board.
Yes.
Okay.
The government gives about 74 million guilders in subsidy.
Wow. Okay.
To
that's significant.
A number of schools.
Okay.
So the ones that are operated...
entirely by
government. Those are about 7 primary schools and 1 vocational school.
Okay.
And they're far from 10.
Okay.
What
closer to
done,
5, 6? 5, 6.
Yeah, maybe 5, 6.
Okay.
7.
Okay.
But what happened is the previous council of ministers decided, and rightly so, I would agree with them, that we need to take those schools from under government and put them in what is called a separate entity. They give them their own school board with their own budget.
Yes.
Because we find that those schools,
Better results.
yeah, and they're managed much better. Government is
Sure.
not good at managing
Sure.
much.
Sure, sure. Okay.
And especially with all the changes, the quick changes in
Yes.
government, it's not a good thing. So what we've done is to begin to outsource. The ideas would be to outsource government schools, put them under their own school board, and give them a subsidy.
Okay.
So they run according to a budget.
Okay.
And then they also would be able to do fundraising.
Okay.
Because private, subsidized schools and private schools,
They can't do that because they're dependent on government subsidies, so they can't raise their own funds.
They
separately.
can. But government schools,
Correct.
they cannot raise funds because any funds that they raise need
Goes
go
to government
directly
coffers.
to-
Yes. So okay, so the subsidized schools, yeah.
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you see they're at right now?
It's difficult to say. Their results are good because government through the Department of Inspection and Exams sort of regulates the final product.
Okay.
But then we would have to compare them with another. So fair
Okay.
enough. If you say
Yeah, you need to have a benchmark to go
yes,
against.
we
and
would
and
have to compare them with another
Okay.
country.
Okay.
So and that's very difficult. But we are not. You're not happy. You can always improve.
okay. Certainly, there's a lot of room for improvement.
A lot of room for
Okay.
improvement.
How difficult is it, and why have we not seen this done, to introduce tourism into the curriculum from a very basic level straight up to high school? It's again, we talked about preparing our youth for our economy. We're a tourism-based economy.
Well, it is done, especially in our high schools, secondary schools. You do get that. There is a tourism curriculum.
Okay, is it a mandatory for all students, or is it like an elective?
No, it's not mandatory. It depends on what you're looking for in terms of tourism. They get to learn about tourism, understand about tourism. They do projects about tourism. So when they leave school, they have a fair understanding of the
importance of tourism.
Yes.
Okay.
And recently, just last year, with the Ministry of TIA, so tourism, the curriculum from the Caribbean was given to the school
To the
boards.
schools here.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and that was sort of digital based.
Okay. Okay, and I suppose that's another area of improvement. Of course, is technology. Yeah, within the schools. But of course, with that comes more subsidies. Yeah,
More
I suppose. A couple of things real quick. I know we're running tight on time. I think this would fall under your portfolio as a minister, and it's something I've not been able to understand. And forgive me, maybe it didn't fall under your ministry. It's a weird maybe topic. Maybe even seems insignificant, but the flag at the top of the hill. Yeah, I guess this falls under the culture portfolio. So the flag was not there. There was a flagpole for majority of the year. A naked flagpole. And believe me, I've driven around this island with clients in the car, and they ask me, "Is this a space antenna? Is this the most crazy things I've heard about what that is?" But then on special occasions, St. Martin's Day, the flag would be flying high, and everyone feels proud. Help me to understand, why was that flag not always there, or why? I'm just trying to understand the logic behind that.
Well, it doesn't fall under culture. Actually, it was a project by Vromi.
Vromi, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
One
it was
of
Vromi's decision about
one of the things about the flag was that you need a flag that's durable.
Yes.
And then the other aspect was finalizing the groundwork, that stuff with the family. So that's not
Oh.
government's property.
Okay. Okay.
And there was an arrangement, but it was not fully finalized, neither notarized. And that is one of the things that has been kept back in that project.
Okay. Okay. That was. Thank you. Because people ask me all the time. I still don't know what to tell them. But yeah, that's a weird one. You were served briefly as the prime minister. What's going on with the airport? I'm sorry, that's a very loaded question. But I feel like, in terms of our recovery efforts, that there's been so much that we should feel good about in terms of we've come such a long way. Yeah. But that is like, the
former government worked diligently on getting the process finalized. It took much longer than we all expected that it would happen. And finally, when everything was signed up and ready to go, you got a change of government. And therefore then eventually the bondholders indicated, they're not sure if the incoming government will honor, or the caretaker government, if the caretaker government signed, if the incoming government would honor the signatures. And so they needed to get what they call a motion of comfort that will assure them that once it's signed, and their things kind of got lost, and especially politics played a role.
Sure.
But now, if you follow the news today, the signing has taken place in Washington, and so the $22 million is released.
We're on the right path.
Yes, we're on the right path.
Okay,
but it took, according to the Minister of Finance, especially, it took months in order to get everything in order. But it's done now.
Okay. Real quick, as we're getting ready to wrap up, the St. Martin Christian Party. We had this discussion back in 2016 when we did an interview, and just for the benefit of the viewers maybe that didn't see that, should voters be, if they are not a Christian, should they feel alienated from the party, or is the party still supportive of their, or can they still expect that the party is going to support their best interests?
Oh, well, I believe that any political party is established there for the people, for the good of the people, and no one is alienated or discriminated. We're there to work for the people. Even the candidates are people who believe in the principles, and we need to just clarify that for a moment. Christian party stands on Christian principles, and Christian principles are actually universal principles of integrity and honesty and transparency and accountability. And everybody wants a government that will operate and function according to those principles. So, and indeed, the party will be there to serve everybody.
The separation of church and state is very clear within your party.
Very clear.
Just to make sure that message is not lost to the voters.
We don't want the church interfering in government. The church has different rules. Neither do we want government interfering in the church.
Fair. True.
But what is said, though, that it's difficult to take God out of government and God out of the people, because everybody believes in the Almighty. And our Constitution says that we subscribe to the principles of God.
So voters who do not necessarily lead a Christian lifestyle should not necessarily be turned off from looking to the Christian party for support.
Absolutely not. I think it would be the best party for them to support, because they will know what they get, what they're getting.
Because there's a lot of industries on this island that strongly contradict Christian values, and I'm referring to, let's say, the casino industry. adult entertainment industry, the bars, there's a lot of bars and partying that happens. St. Martin is sometimes referred to as the Vegas of the Caribbean. And again, with that comes maybe lifestyle choices that may not be, that the Christian faith would not approve of, but that doesn't mean the party is going to frown upon you for that.
Yeah. No, well, it's maybe difficult to separate the two, Christian faith and Christian principles. As I said, the principles are universal.
Sure.
So we, as a party, you're governing a society, and you cannot want the society to uphold and to live according to your particular faith.
Sure. Okay.
Or denomination.
Okay.
But we do expect that everybody would want to see this country governed according to these universal principles. And that's why the party came into being, and that is what we're still going to be doing.
Same-sex marriage or same-sex or gay rights, or that these are things that have been growing in momentum worldwide, let's say.
Well, in our manifesto, it will say, according to, let's say, same-sex marriage, it's not an area that we will vote in favor of.
Okay.
But everybody will know that up front.
Sure.
And
it's good that you know what your position is. Yeah.
But if it's there, we have to accept it and accept it. But as a party, we accept everybody's lifestyle.
Okay.
Yeah. And as a government, that's what we will have to accept.
You've gone on record in the past as saying the Christian Party is in favor of medicinal marijuana.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct.
Have you opened that view to recreational or not as yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Yet is the key word, though. Yet is. That's good.
In fact, we have those. We call them controversial topics listed in our manifesto.
Okay. And if someone wants to read the manifesto, where can they find that?
We're updating it right now, but it will be online. They can find it. But those aspects will probably be the same.
Okay.
But I think having been in government and in parliament, we can tweak our manifesto so that it's more practical, more realistic.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Smith. I know we've run out of time a while ago.
Yes.
I wish we could keep going, but I do want to thank you very much for coming through our studio. And I wish you a lot of success on the campaign trail. And in closing, I'd love to give you the opportunity to speak directly to the voters and send your words of encouragement to come out on January 9th and cast their vote.
Well, first, let me thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Me to the program. It was a pleasure talking to you. And to the voters of St. Martin, I would like to say that the St. Martin Christian Party is here. We have not changed our views. We started as a party that wanted to bring good governance, the honesty, integrity, etc. to government. And that's what we did while we were in government, and this is what we will continue to do. So we ask you to give us your vote so that we can continue to offer you the type of governance really that you would like. Good, honest government that will take our people and take this country to another level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, so we've got to wrap it up. Okay. But it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I wish you lots of success on the campaign trail. And hopefully we do this again in 4 years, not sooner.
In 4 years.
Okay.
If it's up to us, it will be 4 years.
Thank you to everybody who tuned in. As always, we've got another episode coming at you tomorrow. So please, we welcome your feedback in the comment section below, and see you again tomorrow. My name is Arun Jagtiani, and I'm a proud St. Martin. In a few short weeks, our country is going to be heading to the polls to elect 15 new members to Parliament, and I think the entire voting population could benefit from knowing a little bit more about who these candidates are. Over the next few days, I'm going to interview a few new faces and a few political veterans. So join me, St. Martin, and let's talk politics.